All right, guys, thanks for checking out today's video. Today we're diving in talking about why I believe Coleman RVs could be potentially the best and also could potentially be the worst RV investment you could ever make. Let's get into this. All right, so Coleman branded RVs or travel trailers. Super inexpensive. I guess that's one of the biggest reasons why I think they're probably the best camper that you can get, is because if you're brand new to RVing, you don't really know what to expect. You don't know what is out there unless you've kind of dealt with this stuff before. So just getting into RVing and getting out there in something that's relatively inexpensive, I think that's kind of where the Coleman brand shines. And honestly, that's why we purchased it. We purchased this thing for around 25,000 bucks, which is super inexpensive for travel trailers and campers. If you know anything or you've been shopping around for RVs and stuff, you know that's super, super cheap. So with that, there comes a lot of challenges as well, which we'll dive into when we get to the cons. And also, I'm going to tell you why I believe that could be an advantage of a Coleman travel trailer, because it allows you to learn how to work on your stuff rather than buying, you know, a $70,000, $80,000 fifth wheel RV that everything works perfect on. You really don't learn how to work on stuff. You don't learn how to troubleshoot things that tear up and things like that. So when they do tear up, you're kind of lost. You don't really know what's going on. So you have to take it into a dealer and wait a long time to get that thing back. That's why I think the first reason why the Coleman is the best is because it's the cheapest. There's not a lot of campers out there that are as cheap as a Coleman RV. So for that reason, I think it's the best out there. At least to get started in. You don't have to keep this thing forever. I mean, it is a good investment, and overall the quality isn't too bad. And when I say too bad, it's not too bad. But we'll dive into that in a second. But if you're just looking for a new hobby, something to get you and your family into, why not go for a Coleman? Why not go for something that is super inexpensive, something you can get out there, have money left over to buy those accessories, or you're gonna need a lot of money to get those accessories. That's one thing we didn't really take into account when we purchased this, just how much it cost with accessories for these things. These things are like money pits, but in the end, they are pretty cool to get your family out and about, get them out in the mountains, doing different camping trips. We went cross country this summer and had a blast. So there's a lot of things you can do in one that you wouldn't typically be able to do if you didn't have one. So why not go for it? That's why I think Coleman's the best. Let's dive into some other aspects of this. All right, so what's going on in the camper? What's up, buddies? No, hold on. Let's go. You can't go out yet, Bowie. All right, as we come up in here, you can see there's a lot of modern colors and stuff. You see a lot of really white, grays. Cabinets look a lot more modern than what you'd see on typical RVs even 5 to 10 years ago. So they're really starting to put a lot of these modern colors and stuff in, a lot better quality accessories such as this deep sink. It's a bigger sink, it's got the bigger faucet set and everything on it. You're getting a better stove and oven, a nice little microwave, but overall everything looks good. But that's about where it is. I mean, it looks good, but there are some downsides to it looking good. I mean, you got a pretty good little fridge here. The bathroom, same cabinetry, cheap countertops, but hey, they look good from a distance. But then you have super cheap shower accessories, and the toilet is okay. But that's kind of where it ends. We'll talk about some of the cons about the interior and some of the exterior items here in a second. So for number 2, we threw in some good looking accessories. We have a really good looking interior with this modern design. It's not what you typically get on RVs even 5 to 10 years ago. So that's why I think Coleman is, you know, pretty much raising the bar as far as inexpensive campers and RVs go, because they're including this really modern interior, and it just raises the value, I believe, in my opinion. But there's some downsides. Since we're inside, we're going to talk about the cons. Guys, there's a lot of cons, but we're going to kind of make these into some positives. At least my experience has been relatively positive owning this Coleman travel trailer. So with the interior, you have some decent components. but it hasn't always been the best. I've had to do a lot of work to this RV, believe it or not. So if you are getting a Coleman travel trailer, expect to do some repairs. You're gonna have to do some repairs unless I just got a turd. I don't believe I did. I believe they're all very similar in design. But we're just gonna go through talking about some of the things I've had to do as far as repairs and stuff go on this RV. So probably expect to do some of these as well. So one of the first things was our cabinets. The cabinet doors were like loose, and I'm like, that is weird. This thing's brand new. And I got to look, in the screws that hold the cabinets on, the hinges here, were loose. They had actually worked their way loose, this particle board that they're screwed into, and the screws were only about, I would say, 1/2 inch long. They weren't long enough to actually bite in and hold this door up, okay, with all the force, you know, and the vibrations and stuff going down the road. So what I did, I actually had to take all of these screws out and replace them with longer screws, beefier screws. That way they weren't stripped out anymore. They had a thicker thread to them, and now I have no issues with these doors. So that was a little minor tweak there. I know that seems very, very small and minute, but the screws were just garbage, so you have to replace them. So I know that's not something a lot of RV owners want to do as soon as they get something, but you may have to end up doing something like that if you purchase one of these. All right, guys, let's go into the bathroom here, and I want to show you kind of how cheaply made this shower is. And I didn't really have a lot of expectations when I was purchasing this. I just really wanted to get out and about. I wanted to get my family out and about and camp. So I didn't really have too many expectations as far as what I was getting, but let's look at this shower. All right, look at that. It was like this from the factory. I mean, it's just super cheap. It's not even glued down good. And it's even yellowing the way the sealant is. But it's just super cheap. I mean, it's probably thicker than a piece of paper, and that's about it as far as the thickness of this plastic, which, whatever, I get it. You want the RV and the whole rig to be really lightweight. I mean, super cheap sprayer right there. I mean, it's just really cheaply made, but I guess that's okay to keep the weight down and stuff. I haven't really had too many complaints with the shower. It looks cheap. Other than that, it works pretty good, and I haven't had any issues, I guess, so to speak, with that. But let's look at some of these door trims and stuff. I had to go through and put a lot of different screws, more screws in this door trim, because it was just like it was almost falling out of the doorway. Okay, and I've had to do that to every single door trim. It was almost like it was just falling out of the doorway. And I've had to do it to this right here. You can see I've put a lot more screws into this. It's kind of dark. All right, but I've put a lot of screws into this. Okay, so to hold that on there nice and secure, because what was happening is my kids were playing on the bunk beds and they would get snagged or something on this. It almost ripped the whole wall out because it's very thin. I mean, it's not really high quality. And once again, I get it. This thing has to be lightweight. You don't want it to be super heavy when you're traveling and having to tow it with the vehicle, but it's just made really cheap. Let's talk about the bunk beds. This is a huge mess. But the bunk beds, look at that. I've had to reinforce these bunk beds. When I first got this, probably I would say the first time we took it out camping, this thing was loose. I thought the whole top bunk was going to fall down. And my youngest daughter plays down here, and I didn't want this falling, obviously. And I was looking around. It was only held up by probably 4 screws. The entire top bunk was only held in by 4 screws. So I went through and I took some thin strips of pine wood and actually lined the bottom all the way around and screwed those in. And finding the studs in this thing is pretty difficult because they're really thin studs to keep the weight down. But that way I could beef this up a little bit, and also screwed some more screws into the studs from the top as well, because I didn't want that thing falling through. So that's some things you might have to look at if you have concerns because the quality just wasn't there. With the couch right here, I had to screw these in because this whole panel fell off the side of the couch. And I had to reinforce it on the other side as well because it was just, I guess, that cheaply made. The screws just came right out of here. So that was some of the things I had to do. Not too bad with the interior. Let's go to the exterior and talk about some of the things I had to do there. But overall, not too bad. Just a little minute things. Oh yeah, actually, let's talk about, I forgot, this blind fell down. So I had to screw that whole bracket back in because that thing fell. And also, I don't think this one fell. This one over here fell. The whole top and the blind set fell down. So that was another thing I had to do, go through and secure that back up. Luckily, the cabinets aren't falling down. They actually found some studs to put those into. That was a problem with the blinds. They didn't screw them into studs. They were just into the thin paneling, which is super thin. It's not going to hold anything. So that is one thing I had to go through and do. Now let's go out to the exterior and talk about that. All right, so we're back outside. We're going to do some talking about some of the cons of some of the exterior components here. So one of the biggest complaints that I had with this was how squeaky the suspension was on this thing. When I got it, we'd be like pulling in somewhere, or we'd just be pulling around the parking lot where I have the RV storage, and this thing would be squeaking like crazy. Squeak, 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 squeak. So I'm like, how do I fix this? And I'm going to show you in a future video how you can go through and fix this with some white lithium grease, and takes care of all that squeaking. So essentially what it is the bushings that are in the leaf springs that connect to the leaf spring hangers and stuff, there is no lubrication in it. So it's just metal on metal, and it just squeaks like crazy. So I'll show you what I did, and we'll do a follow-up video, but I just kind of want to show you what that looks like. So if you have a Coleman, this is probably what you're gonna have to do. I think you have to do this with a lot of them. It's not just Coleman's, but take your white lithium grease and spray it down in these fittings. Everywhere you see a fitting, and that'll take care of it. No more squeaks, because that was just metal on metal. There's a lot of torquing that goes on as that suspension moves, and it just creates a lot of squeaking. So you take that white lithium grease and it takes care of it. So some more pros of getting a Coleman is you get pretty decent equipment on the exterior as well, such as this Lippert awning system that you get, electric awning system. And it actually works pretty daggone good. I haven't had any complaints with this. It's relatively fast, it's very sturdy. You can adjust it up and down as far as, you know, kind of the tilt from the back end here. And it hasn't gave us any issues. And you just have to make sure to secure it back and roll that thing all the way in before you pull off, which you should be doing anyway. But other than that, I haven't had any issues with this. The Lippert equipment that comes with a Coleman isn't that bad. I know they've had some issues in the past with their frames and stuff like that, bending and stuff up at the tongue. But this one isn't one of those. This one's made a little different than the ones that had the issues. But those weren't even mainly on the Colemans. They were on like Forest River and other campers like that. So this one made a little bit different. All right, another thing I like is this electric stabilizer system that it has. Also from Lippert, the PSX1. This thing works really good. You can go up super fast and then stabilize it super quick. I mean, if you're into camping and stuff, like 1 or 2 nights at a campsite and then you're moving on to somewhere else, having a stabilizer system like this where it's electronic, where you can just go, park, and in 10 minutes be set up. This is one thing about this camper. You know, I can set up probably less than 10 minutes in most campsites because this one doesn't have slide outs. Not having slide outs, you don't have to obviously slide them in and out and put up with all that trouble. This right here is just a camp and go type of camper. You know, just set up real quick, tear it down real quick, and you're on to your next place. So these electric stabilizers also help with that. this Lippert solid step system, also really high quality. And that's another thing about this Coleman, it's really low to the ground. Most campers you see have a lot of ground clearance. This one doesn't have a lot of ground clearance, so you don't have to have a really tall step to accommodate that. And it's really good because I have a toddler, so she can climb in and out of this thing really easy. A lot of RVs, they'll have 4 or 5 different steps climbing up into it, and that can kind of be a hazard if you have young kids. So that's another really good reason I like this Coleman right here. It's low to the ground. So another thing I had to do on this Coleman is I went through with zip ties and secured up a lot of different stuff under here. There's a lot of stuff hanging down, wires just going every which way. And I went through and secured it all up. So also gave me a little bit of insight on what was under the rig and just how everything was laid out. So I feel like if you just had a perfect unit, didn't go through and do a lot of this stuff, you kind of would be confused on where everything was. So you really should get to know your rig, no matter whether it works perfect or not. But just being able to do some maintenance stuff on your rig itself, something you should be able to do and learn how to do. I've also had some issues with the propane tanks. I've had to, switch them around, do all kinds of stuff because the hot water heater wasn't working at one point. But once again, just gave me a little bit of insight on how to do stuff on this rig. The batteries, had some issues with that. We actually put a master battery switch on this thing, which check out my video on how to install that. That's another thing Colemans don't come with, so you have to learn how to install one of those if you don't want your battery to die all the time. You want to have some type of way to cut that off, so this is going to be a good way to do it. Colemans come with some pretty decent storage. This one only has the front hatch that goes all the way through. Has quite a bit of storage. It opens up in there. The other side is completely open. This one's kind of closed off because you have your city water connection. You got some other 120 outlets here. And you got some other outlets and stuff like that for the water hose. But other than that, the storage is pretty good on this thing. Most of the other Colemans, they come with the same type of hatch in the back here. So you're getting double the storage. On this one, we kind of suffered on the storage, but it's what it is. So when I picked up this travel trailer from Camping World, they told me it didn't come with a spare tire. I was a little taken back. I'm like, what do you mean it doesn't come with a spare tire? Because tires go out all the time on trailers, especially like these Colemans. They come with very cheap tires on them to begin with. So expect to replace those things, I would say, relatively quick, because you're probably gonna have some bulging and the tread separation, things like that. So you need to have a spare tire. All right, guys, so that's just some of my overview impressions and stuff of Coleman. So like I said, Colemans have a lot of good pros to them because they're very inexpensive. They get people out there, and they get people out there camping. I guess that's the biggest thing. If you're just trying to get your family out on the weekend and do something fun, go for it. A Coleman's gonna get you out there doing this for very, very cheap. Let's go with the Coleman. You're gonna be able to do that. So that is one of the beauties of a Coleman. They get the RVer out there, the new RVer out there on a budget. So that's one cool thing about it. And at the same time, you're gonna learn how to work on this stuff, because you're gonna have to learn, because there's gonna be some stuff on this thing that is messed up. There's gonna be some stuff from the factory that's messed up. So I strongly suggest you learn, you YouTube, you find some videos on how to repair some of this stuff, because it's going to save you time. It's going to save you money from having to take this back to the dealership to get it fixed, because they're going to have it for probably a year. I guess depending on the location, but a lot of times for warranty work, they will keep your rig for a long period of time. So you really want to mitigate having to do that. Another thing we talked about was the modern accessories that you get with the interior, the modern look. The design is really, really cool. It's got a lot of bright colors. It's not that dark, old wood, mahogany type look that you get with a lot of older campers. That's kind of the thing of the past. A lot of people like that new look now. They don't want that old woodsy look of the past. So that is one cool thing that Coleman has going for them. They switched to making that probably, I would say, 3 or 4 years ago. So that is the right move, Coleman. in the right direction. So another thing we talked about was some of the components that you get with this thing, such as the Lippert solid step. You get the awning from Lippert, and you also get some of the powered stabilizers that makes this thing just a breeze to set up and tear down. I mean, I'm talking less than 10 minutes, I get this thing fully hooked up, set up, and ready to camp, ready to sleep, whatever, and ready to move the next day. It's that easy. And then some of the cons. Some of their quality control is just lacking. The quality just isn't there. There's a lot of things missing, and screws are missing. I mean, my top bunk almost fell, and that should not happen with a brand new rig. So that's one thing I think Coleman needs to step the game up on, but the price is low, gets people out there camping, so I don't know if I can complain too much. All right, guys, so that's all we got today on this, I guess, rant video on why I believe Coleman could be potentially the best RV you can get if you're a brand new RVer, and potentially why it could be the worst because the quality control is just that bad. But as we said, it's going to get you learning how to work on your stuff, which can be a good thing. You turn it into a positive, and it's going to help you learn how to work on your investment that you purchased, and you're getting out there for pretty cheap. So at the end of the day, guys, I don't know if you can go wrong with a Coleman. They're pretty good, it's pretty solid, and I really don't have any complaints about this purchase. So if you're looking at Coleman's, I'd say go for it. I mean, they're not bad for the money, and it's getting you out there camping, something new that you and your family or yourself can go do. So just go for it, pull the trigger on it. All right, guys, thanks for watching, like and subscribe. Catch you guys in future videos.